What up, guys? Today we got a question from Marcos, who sent me a message about a meniscus tear issue that he's having. So he's 42 years old. He's been doing jiu-jitsu for 15 years, getting ready to deal with a meniscus tear that he has on his knee. He says he wants to take alternative routes, but everything's sort of pointing that he's probably going to have a meniscectomy, which is where they trim the cartilage down in the knee so that you regain function and to get the knee healthy again. And he says it just seems like such a contradiction that you're going to shave the cartilage and remove this cushion from my knee, but yet it's somehow supposed to make my knee healthier long term. And so he's curious about me because he knows I've had my meniscus surgeries years ago, one of them 21 years ago at the time of recording this. And he's wondering, like, how do my knees feel? And is there anything that I would recommend as far as, helping afterwards? And so, brother, thank you for the question. So let's jump into this. So meniscus injuries, meniscus tears are one of the most common injuries to the knee that I see that require you to go under the knife. And again, it's different from a repair. A meniscus repair is a long recovery because you have to lock that leg in place and everything else, whereas a meniscus, like meniscectomy where they shave it down, it's a relatively short recovery time. You got to be careful because of that, because your knee's going to feel good like really quick. And I would encourage you to wait about 12 weeks before you really start to get back at it and ease back into it. But I'll share with this. I had my first meniscectomy done at 2004, my second one done in 2014. So I've had my right knee over 20 years ago was operated on, left one about 10 years ago. And I'm happy to say that they feel good. They don't feel bad at all. I train all the time. I lift. I do all that stuff. And, I just turned 40, so I just joined you. You're 42. Just joined the 4-0 club. And I'm thinking about, as I'm, getting older, reflecting back on how I feel now versus how I was when I was younger. And it's one of those things I'm happy to say that I actually feel better at 40 than I did when I was 30, because I got a lot more intelligent about the way that I did a lot of things. And so I figured what I do is, one, tell you that I feel fine. I can't tell you your situation and how it's going to work out, whatever else, but there's hope, right? You'll probably be okay. But also, too, here's some things to consider when you're getting back to it, and maybe some things to consider as you're going down the road to try to help keep your knees strong, keep your knees healthy. And if you are a person that's getting ready to deal with a meniscectomy or a meniscus surgery or anything like that, or if you just got some knee issues or some tight knees, then hopefully this video helps you out with some ideas on how to deal with it. So Marcus, let's jump into these tips. Hopefully this helps you. So the first thing is, I don't sit too much and I try to move a lot. So a lot of us have jobs where we sit at a desk and we work, right? And myself included, I have that. Sure, like sometimes I'm in this room wrestling around with sweaty grown adults trying to strangle each other. But then there's other times where I might be planning out classes, watching matches to get ideas for training, or planning out marketing campaigns for the gym, or writing up emails, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of desk work involved to running a business. And so when I'm at the desk, I have an adjustable desk where I can raise it up and lower it down. And I try to do that periodically throughout the day. So I sit with a timer. When the timer goes off, I will stand up and I will alternate back and forth. And so I try not to stand too long, but I try not to sit too long either. And so that movement of back and forth tends to help. And also too, I try to go for walks on a regular basis, whether that's a walk behind the gym or my property. I try to get up in the morning, get some sun, go for a walk. And throughout the day, if I've been in the office for a while, I try to get up and go out for a little walk, sometimes after meals. And that seems to help. They have that old saying, motion is the lotion. You got to grease the groove. I feel like the more that I walk around and move around, the better my knees feel. And so that's something that I try to do regularly, is sitting and standing at the desk and then go for regular walks. And simple as that is, that seems to move the needle in a positive direction big time. The next idea is stretching. So some people will avoid stretching and they act like it's the devil, right? You shouldn't stretch, it's terrible. There's a study here that says you shouldn't, and this guru on the internet says you shouldn't. You do what you want to do, bro. But for me, stretching has helped out a bunch. I tend to do things, as far as my knees go, it's quads, hamstrings, ankles, hips, all that stuff. And if I keep those things stretched out and loose just a few times a week, I tend to feel that my knees do better, right? They tend to feel a lot more loose, and I don't get out of the bed like a snack crackling and popping, right? It's sounding like a bowl of Rice Krispies. And when I was younger, when I was close to 30, that's how I sounded when I was getting out of bed. I was training really hard and I was getting out of bed and I would literally pop and crack as I was walking up the damn stairs. That's not something you want to feel like when you're 30 years old. Now, as I get older, I can bust out of bed and I can drop into a nice squat without any issues immediately out of bed, right? I don't have that, oh God, I'm so stiff. And it's because I tend to stretch just a little bit every day, but at least 3 times a week. I like to do it either after training, when I'm nice and warm, or after a hot shower, morning or evening, after a hot shower when my muscles are warm and doing my stretches. Now, there's a couple videos that I have on my channel. You can put in like Chewjitsu stretching, and a lot of those contain similar stuff or the same. And those stretches, those are the good ones. The one that I put up, I think it was like May of 23 or June of 23. That one's a great one. That one has a lot of really simple stretches, and I use that a ton. Those videos don't get very many views because they're not cool. They're not exciting. It's not some submission, but if you want your knees to feel better, just do a little bit of that on a regular basis, and it's gonna make a big difference. Don't wait around for your knees to just be completely destroyed to start doing this stuff. Do it now, right? Like if you start feeling a little bit of anything, or if your knees are starting to get stiff, just do a little bit now. Pay it forward now. So this way later on, you don't have to deal with it when it's like really bad, right? What did Seneca say? I was reading this the other day. He said, place your hand on today so that you don't have to depend on tomorrow, right? So again, stretching and just giving your body a little maintenance goes a long way. And Marcus, if you're coming back from a meniscectomy, just take those rehab exercises that you're doing with your PT and just keep doing them as maintenance like all the time throughout forever. Just think of them as like, it's like you got a car that's got like a couple quirks. Your body's got some quirks now. Just keep doing those things. It's a good idea in my bearded opinion, so take that for what you will. The next thing is I don't skip leg day. So a lot of people that have stiff knees, tight knees, whatever it is, they will avoid lifting their legs. They don't want to go into it because they don't want to do unnecessary damage and they feel like it hurts, whatever, right? But I think that a lot of people will do themselves a disservice by doing that, because I found this out from my own experience that one of the things that causes a lot of the tightness in the joints in some cases is a lack of strength, not necessarily muscle tightness. Sure, there is muscle tightness, there are shortened muscles, things like that, but in a lot of cases, when people stop lifting and they stop exercising these muscles, they can develop muscular imbalances, which creates a tightness. And so you might have a perfectly long muscle that where it needs to be, but it has this tightness because of an imbalance in strength. And as you start to strengthen the whole body up, you'll find that everything starts to feel better. And that's something that I felt where, as I lift more often now in my legs, I have less issues. And for me personally, like I try to get at least one leg day in each week. And again, these are not heavy lifts. I lift moderate weight. I'll use things like eccentrics, like pauses and things like that, where I'm really slowing the weight down, holding pauses, lots of different exercises like that. The methodology you would say is the stuff that's inside my Swollen Roll program, which many of you guys have bought. If you want to check out and get details, check the links down below. But, I don't use that same lifting program now because I've used it before, but it's a good one. But I still use a lot of the same methods that are inside of that program, like, again, slow eccentrics, pauses, things of that nature, where I can utilize very kind of minimal weight, moderate weight, but still get a great workout, stress the muscles. And what I found is it's given me more flexibility in my body where, like I said, I can get up out of bed, have been sleeping for 8 hours and drop down into a squat and not feel, oh God, I'm stiff, right? Whereas 10 years ago, that's how I felt. And so again, I would encourage you, get a good lifting program and don't skip leg day. For me, if I go like 2 weeks without a leg day, my knees start to feel creaky and I'll lift and voila, I feel better. And just for the record, a lot of the physical therapists that I've talked to who are big on getting people back to their sport, including my co-host on the podcast, Eugene, who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, they talk about the fact that strength training is one of the best things that you can do for injury prevention. So again, just a good idea to add some strength training into it. You don't have to do it a ton. You could lift as little as a couple times a week and get a lot of value from it. But again, doing some leg exercises is very valuable in my bearded opinion and experience. And I would encourage you to do it as well, Marcus, as anyone else that's dealing with some meniscus issues or knee issues down the road. Obviously, just sort of including this, if your knee is really banged up and you just had the surgery or it's injured, maybe back off. But assuming everything's all right and healthy, do your lifts. The last thing is diet. So this is the one that probably most people don't want to hear and will not care about, but I'm just giving you the things that have moved the needle for me in a positive direction. So, when I started getting into my 30s, I really started to be real mindful of my diet. And then when I was 35, I started working with my coach, Eli, who, laid my diet out for me and had it all planned out. And for the most part, the diet is just whole foods. So there are some things that are highly processed, like some protein powders and some condiments like hot sauce and things like that. They're processed foods, but for the most part, it's, oats, it's meat, it's fruit, vegetables, just normal food and very, very little added sugar to anything. And so I remember getting on that diet, and one of the things that I noticed was how much energy I had. I was like, well, that's good, like the energy. But one of the things that I really noticed that I was surprised about, wasn't expecting, was the fact that I felt no joint pain in my mangled old hands here. By the way, if you're new to jiu-jitsu, don't get freaked out. These are my hands, and these are part genetics, part jiu-jitsu. My mom had knobby knuckles. She never trained a day in her life. Add jiu-jitsu into it, and you get these like mangled grippers right here. But surprisingly, they don't feel bad at all. Like I don't have any pain in them at all. But My knees also feel it because, again, I'm missing a little bit of that cartilage, and there's some arthritis in my knees for sure. But for the most part, they feel okay as long as I keep my diet in check. When I start eating a bunch of foods that tend to cause inflammation, which for me is things like dairy and a lot of desserty, fatty foods, like sugary fatty foods, and too much alcohol, I start to feel the stiffness in my hands and my knees. So if I'm on vacation or sometimes just go a little bit too overboard with something, I will feel it in those areas. And so for me, I tend to keep those things at bay. I try not to drink too much, maybe a drink a week. If I eat any dessert foods, which I typically don't, it's like maybe one thing in a week, right? Keep them very minimal because for me, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Me feeling mentally foggy and feeling creaky in my joints, which is going to affect my training and everything else that I do, that juice isn't worth the squeeze in relation to feeling a little bit of buzz or having some short-term mouth pleasure. So again, diet's really important. Find a good nutritionist if diet's not something you really know, and get on a good, clean diet. When I say clean, I just mean like a diet full of whole foods where you're getting rid of all the processed stuff, and just see how you feel. It may not affect you the same way, but for me, it was a big game changer, and it's made a huge impact on how I feel when I'm training really hard and getting ready for competitions, and how fast I recover, and also how these old joints feel after 20 plus years of grappling and having 2 knee surgeries. And so Marcos and anybody else that's having some issues with your knees, or maybe you're having a meniscus tear, or you've had a meniscus surgery and you're thinking about it long term, those are some ideas from you. Again, I feel pretty damn good. My knees feel good. Don't get me wrong, like I don't feel like I did when I was 20, right? But I still feel pretty damn good at being 40, still able to train at a good clip, still able to lift weights, still able to do a lot of things. And this is with 2 knee surgeries, one over 20 years ago, and doing all the grappling stuff that I've been doing. And these are the things that really seemed like they've moved the needle. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional. I'm just sharing from like one dude to another who's getting ready to go maybe under the knife and getting ready to have surgery, or maybe you've already had surgery and you're dealing with it. I'm just sharing from experience, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. So anyway, that is the idea. If you have any questions about the meniscus stuff, you're free to drop it down below, and I'll get around to maybe making another video for it. This seems to be a common question from a lot of you, and that's that. So guys, talk to you next time.